So coming back to the first and the most important legislation, that's the first thing you will have to see in case of any advertisement. And now when I'm saying advertisement, it is going to be in the audio visual format. Now an audio visual format has already been considered when the UCPNP was not, I won't say notified by the parliament, but definitely taken cognizance of by the ministry, and where the UCPMP guidelines have been issued to all the associations of pharma companies, making making an appeal to these associations to follow these guidelines. So the audio visual context or the advertisements have already been taken care of.
Stating that UCPMP is voluntary, does it really even require to be followed by the industry in current terms?
So when we say voluntary, it actually gives a very different connotation. It says, oh, it's voluntary, so actually I have a choice whether to follow it or not. And if whenever I have a choice, my choice will be, say, not to follow it.
Sure.
This could be a general perception because it works to my advantage. However, the UCPMP has been a code which has been designed by the ministry. I think, is it the Ministry of Chemicals and Drugs? So one, designed in consultation with various industry associations. Pharmaceutical companies would be a part of these associations, which means that they have on their own said that we will abide by the code which has been adopted by these associations. The UCPMP is a code which is adopted by this association, and the moment a pharma company is a member of that association, there is an undertaking that the pharma company will adhere to the UCPMP. So broadly, though it appeared to be voluntary, it is no longer as voluntary as we thought it is. It is voluntary because there is no statute to it, or there is no regulation from an outside say there's no law relating to it, but there is self-regulation, and the self-regulation is implemented by the associations. Audio-visual material must be supported by all relevant printed material so that all relevant requirements of the code are complied with. Now, so where do we keep the printed material, or how much material or information can you actually disclose on the ad? And then we have to see what is the best way of complying with this. So one of the best ways of complying with this could be that on the ad itself, or on the audio visual format itself, if you can upfront write that there is more information to this which is relevant and which is important to be read, you can avail of this information by writing on a particular email ID, or maybe clicking on a certain link. If it's on a digital platform, you can give an embedded link so that the person who needs to know that information is easily available to that person. Format. Let us try and look at what the exclusions are. All these advertisements that I'm talking about under UCPMP are advertisements for prescription drugs, which has to be made for medical practitioners only. Any non-prescription drugs which have to be advertised, say, for the layman, have to get a clearance from the appropriate authority from the drugs under the Drugs and Cosmetics Act. So no advertisement can be released in the public domain without prior permission. So that's a bottom line. Prior permission will not be given for advertisement of any prescription drugs to the common man. Those drugs can be advertised only to the medical practitioner. So when the digital medium is used, this is extremely crucial, because you don't want your advertisements which are meant for medical practitioners only to go out in the public domain, because then that is surely non-compliance, and that will lead to huge liabilities, because you're actually targeting. You can always come up with a plea that oh, it happened by mistake, it was never meant to be that way. but the harm is already done. Your prescription drug is already out in the open, say on social media. There, in order to come out of your liability, steps have to be shown and demonstrated and proved that effective or adequate steps were taken to ensure that this does not get released in the public medium. Mukul, is there a lag when I speak, because it shows my internet connection to be a bit
It's
unstable?
been perfectly fine. I can hear you
Okay.
clearly. No problem.
Okay, so that's the first thing. Uh, Again, one of the exclusions which I've already touched upon earlier is that it cannot be designed to disguise their real nature. So promotional content, the term itself is, eloquent enough to demonstrate that you're trying to promote a product, you're trying to sell a product, or you're trying to sell, say, a service. Now, the moment you're trying to sell a service, you're saying that here is something that I have to offer that you can buy for consideration. And then you're saying this is value for money, we are the best in the market, and all of that. Fine, as long as there are no false claims made, or even uh, there is no misleading information. It has to be upfront. It has to look like an advertisement, because it is an advertisement, and it cannot be passed off as anything else. So it cannot be passed off as, say, a research literature, or an article in a journal, or some research fellow or a scientist making a presentation saying that this is my discovery, or this is, I've spent so many years in research and these are my findings. No, because that would be disguising the real nature of promotional content. So the way editorials are written and passed off so advertisements are written like editorials and passed off as editorials, you will see generally there is one line which says this is an advertisement. So similar steps needs to be followed if in case you would want to style promotional content as, say, a scientific paper. But there, you will have to say it upfront that though we are using this tactic of styling it as a scientific paper, it is actually an advertisement. We already spoke about this, that advertisements can be only about allopathic medicines and not about Ayush medicines. If it is an Ayush medicine, separate permission has to be procured. The fourth exclusion I've taken from, of course, the code applicable to medical practitioners, that you cannot use the name and the photograph of a medical practitioner to sell a drug or to advertise a drug, because that is not only detrimental to the medical practitioner, because that is a clear violation of the code of conduct, but because a pharma company has helped or aided the medical practitioner in a practice which is not allowed under the code of practice, the pharma company will be equally liable. Deceptively similar is a typical expression used under Trademarks Act. Generally, and another terminology that we will generally use is, we call it as passing off. That you want to pass off your product as another, as a product of another company, which is more popular or which is more known. So you want to sort of ride on that. Okay, so this is clause 3.2, which you can refer to later on as and when you get the time. But clause 3.2 says that the minimum amount of information that has to be clearly and legibly visible, or must be an integral part of the promotional material, and it has 6 subclauses. So which means 6 data points or 6 types of information have to appear on the ad. And if you don't have enough space for it, it has to appear somewhere in the background, and you should be able to say on the ad itself that we have all this information ready and handy, so as and when you require, please ask for it, and that should be made readily available. So in the background of that ad, you should be having these 6 pieces of information absolutely handy. So, for example, I'm just reading one or two. Adverse reactions, warnings, and precautions for use and relevant contraindications of the product. Now, this actually is an integral part of your drug advertisement. But because you may not have enough space to display it, this could be available as part of additional information that may be available to the point out is this is one piece of regulation that very directly talks of objectionable advertisements. So the name itself suggests that certain advertisements will be objectionable if they fall under the purview of the definitions given under the Act. And those advertisements which are objectionable could be relating to a drug or a magical remedy. So I'm not going to go to the definitions, but they have been specifically defined as what is a drug and what is a magical remedy. And these are the possibilities where it will be held to be objectionable. So any drug for the treatment of certain diseases and disorders which are specifically prohibited under Section 3, and I've given you some. Now, in addition to these three, which are relating to miscarriage, correction of menstrual disorder, improvement for capacity for human beings for sexual pleasure, there is one whole list which is given in the schedule of that legislation. So if the drug falls under the list, under one of the items in the list, then the compliance of this law, there is any non-compliance of the DMRA or the DCA, there is direct criminal prosecution with an imprisonment up to 6 months. And it is very specifically written that in case of a company, the board or the person who was in charge of running the business will be liable for criminal prosecution. So generally when we say, but it's, it's a separate legal entity, the corporate veil cannot be lifted, and people who are running the company cannot be made liable for criminal prosecution. But there is an enabling provision in the Act which says the board and the persons in charge of running the business will be made liable in their capacity as per their designation for criminal prosecution. Wide powers have been given to the police for search and seizure, and the place where the drugs are stored, or where, in our case, where the advertisements were even created or made, there could be a search, not only a physical search, but there could be search on digital assets as well. So your computers, your networks, your phones, all will be exposed to a search and perhaps even a seizure. The IMC regulations again are very, very simple to understand because they're very direct. And the only thing that one needs to remember is, are we dealing with these two entities as two separate entities? A medical practitioner who has nothing to do with what the pharma company is doing, his job is to prescribe medicines the way he has been trained to do, irrespective of from which company it is coming from. And that is exactly what is expected of a pharma company. Do not influence the doctors to prescribe your medicine, irrespective of whether you're good or bad, because that's not his job. So you don't interfere with his professional autonomy, is what the professional code of conduct is trying to say. But obviously it didn't happen that way, and that is why it had to undergo again a very large amendment which said that pharma companies cannot do this, cannot give gifts, and cannot sponsor or cannot give any monetary consideration to the doctors. Otherwise that would be frowned upon even by the professional bodies. Very easy to understand. For any Ayush medicine, no advertisements unless there is an advance approval by the state licensing authority, and every ad will have a unique number. So that is what, these are the two compliances which are an absolute essential. Sure, there are some things you don't like me saying, but I have to. Such orders had to be even thought of. This has not been passed as yet, but it could come in any time, or maybe UCPMP will get converted into a full-fledged legislation. But three very stringent consequences were prescribed under that order. One is a criminal prosecution, which I've already talked about, monetary compensation or a liability or payment of penalty, and suspension of the marketing activity of the highest selling drug of that company for a specific period of time were the prescribed penalties under that order. Passes the test of law. These are the other legislations that regulate digital content. Let me directly jump to the Information Technology Act compliance. Digital content can actually also create a lot of harm in the background. So it is not just about foreground, how does the image look like, but it also about what damage it does in the background. So does it have any embedded code? Does your ad have the capability of collecting background information of the digital asset it is on? Are you collecting private or sensitive personal information of the user while disseminating this information? Is there any malware embedded? Is there any executable code embedded? Is something that the IT Act has addressed, and if it comes to light that these are practices which have been followed, that in the background or as very covert operations, a lot of data is getting collected by just sharing this ad from one platform to another, then there would be huge liabilities. One is a criminal liability, and the second is criminal liabilities are under section 66 of the Act, and there is a civil liability under section 43, where there could be penalty going up to 5 crores before a special tribunal called the adjudicating officer. Another thing that also needs to be seen, that the content, so we call this as content liability. I won't spend much time on it, but what simply needs to be understood is that the content, you have to ensure that it is not harmful or harassing or defamatory in any manner, obscene, hateful, racially or ethnically objectionable. And now there is also a lot of talk about including the word gender, so that it is not misogynistic, it does not misrepresent women in an objectionable manner. All that will be introduced. So that is something that needs to be ensured when the ad is released, because those are violations under other legislations and criminal penalties going up to 3 years or 5 years of imprisonment. So you saw that under Drugs and Cosmetics Act, it was just 6 months, but here the penalties are really very harsh. And all these will be board level responsibilities, because all these legislations say that if it is a company, then people in charge of doing the business will be held liable. Similarly, for trademark violations, deceptively similar and passing off, we've already seen, but we see a lot of digital content being misused for meta tagging and deep linking, which are trademark violations, where it is mostly to do with how to deal with your competitor, or how to get better of your competitor by meta tagging. So these are things that one needs to be at least aware of, and ensure that the people who are designing these ads are not engaging in these practices, which will eventually lead to a liability.
Legislation, even those which have been brought out relatively recently, they are not truly adapted to the digital age.
Yes.
So for the pharma industry, when they look at the regulatory context of digital advertising, what are the key elements why it needs to be managed differently as compared to the traditional advertising channels that they've used? What are kind of the 2-3 differences which makes it due to which they need to handle it differently as compared to what they've done in the past?
So how I would look at it is, though the laws are not really equipped to look at digital content or digital platforms or the electronic medium per se, conventionally it was easy to manage a paper advertisement because it was static. You had you had much more time to say, look at it, to finalize it, and to disseminate it. Even dissemination was under highly controlled environment, because you knew exactly how many copies you've made, whom you've entrusted it to, who is going to be your end user, so what is the endpoint that it will reach. So it was easily trackable, it was easily manageable, because it was more tangible than it is in the digital scenario. The digital medium itself throws up issues like, as I had earlier said, the dissemination is at a click of a button. Even if you try to restrain the distribution to X number of nodes, it is very easily possible that someone just takes a screenshot and puts it on WhatsApp, just as an example. But you've said it is for this advertisement is for a registered medical practitioner. You're displaying it for the registered medical practitioner only, but he himself decides, oh, let me take a screenshot and preserve it because this is important for me. And then for some reason he decides to forward it in his, say, a group of WhatsApp medical professionals group, and from there there's no control. I mean, you cannot really predict where it is going to go. Now, you will have your pharma brand on it. Perhaps there will be a platform brand on it, and it is out in the open. Now, what does the law say? It is for registered medical practitioners only. You and me know it, pharma company knows it. But now it is in the hands of the viewer. He may not know this. So it is absolutely important that that disclaimer is upfront. So even if we all get hauled up for it, that how did it even reach the public space? We say there was due diligence done. In fact, it also talks about, it also has an email ID which says there is more information related to this drug, and you need to write at this address or click on a particular link uh, to avail of this information. So when it comes to a digital medium, first is to it will be important for the team to actually make a list of items of what can actually go wrong, and you can have a standard process or a checklist relating to it, saying that if this is my digital ad and it is meant to do XYZ things, what if it does more than these XYZ things? How do I protect myself against it? Uh, and I particularly see a problem with sharing. Another problem that I see is that that content has to be copyrighted. It will be copyrighted because it is going to be owned by the pharma company.
So what do you do before you start off, and what do you incorporate as part of your campaign so as to minimize this risk?
So what do you do to start? Perhaps could be a lengthy process. And I'll just give you another example of how we do compliance for non-pharma companies, let's say for IT compliance. So what I generally do is, so that you don't miss out on anything, you first make a list of legislations applicable, which we already have made a list, and we've said, okay, these 8 legislations are applicable. Look at every clause and say that, does my advertisement comply with this clause or not? Or you can say, okay, this clause is not applicable at all. So let's say a clause relating to Ayush, the company can say, no, I need not worry about it because it's not Ayush medicine. But so that it gives you an absolute black and white picture of what is applicable to me and what is not. Now, the moment you have this master, say, list ready, that, okay, out of these 8 legislations and 8 into, say, 10 provisions, 80 provisions, only 15 are applicable to me or my business or my advertisement. Now, out of 80, you have to worry only about 50. Now, once you have identified those 15, then you say, okay, now in order to comply with this clause so and so, this is how my ad will look like, or this is what I need to put on my ad. So I think that will be a lengthy process, and that could be also a one-off process once you have your master list ready.
Which you can do across the company in general, right? You can create a standardized checklist which you're saying, okay, this anytime you're doing a digital advertising campaign, this is a checklist against which I need to check whether I'm doing all the right thing.
Right. Now I also have one, sort of word of warning, because the moment you have a checklist, you become complacent because you
Mhm.
say, oh, there's a checklist. So
Hmm.
I have checked it. So it's more like tick mark and cross.
Hmm.
So that checklist has to be dynamic. Every time there's somebody who needs to own the checklist and say that every time I am going to have a look at it afresh, not just the checklist, but I'm going to see, has the law changed? Is there something new which has come up? Has the high court said something else? That is, you need to be vigilant about. It cannot be static. It has to be a
Point.
living checklist.
Relevant.
Now, going to stage two, we already had in our presentation the exclusions, which I said that this is something that the ad either cannot do or has to do. For example, it says for medical practitioners only, which means the ad needs to have upfront that note. If that ad is trying to look like, say, a research article, then upfront it has to say that it is an advertisement, because actually our intention is to in a way pass it off as a research article. But in order to be on the right side of law, somewhere you need to say it is an advertisement, and in a font that is visible,
Understood.
not in a font that actually sort of just gets lost in that because then the spirit is not protected, spirit of the legislation. So I think one or two, yeah, something like this. Or as I said in 3.2, you need to have all the relevant information of the drug actually published in the ad. So what is the dosage, what is the risk, what are the side effects, etc. Now if you don't have enough space on the ad, then that document has to be ready somewhere and should be in a way easily distributable. So the moment the medical practitioners asks for this additional information, we should be able to readily provide it.
We are not allowed to advertise prescription drugs, but what if we have them on our websites and show it on our website banner?
No, that will be a clear violation. I mean, I don't have any doubt about that, because a prescription drug has to be marketed or sold, or the information has to be given only to a registered practitioner. A website can be accessed unless you have a login to the website. Otherwise, a website is available to the public at large.
Hmm.
Uh, it is no different from any hoarding or an, if you can't do that on a public hoarding at a traffic signal, then you can't do it on a website.
Pharma companies are promoting drugs directly to patients through awareness programs. They are engaging actually patients, although they don't promote drugs directly to patients. Um, I'm assuming in such situations where you're doing awareness programs, it complicates the picture to some extent. So, how careful do or what care do companies need to take while running such patient awareness programs and directed towards the patient itself?
So actually, it's not complicated. What is the awareness about? The awareness has to be about the disease. So if you're creating awareness about a medical condition or a disease, okay, good. It's for the public at large to know. The problem is that this is just, if that is being used only as a garb to advertise the product, that is not allowed. I mean, I'm giving you a very black and white answer. The law says that you cannot advertise uh, prescription drugs to patients or the public at large, even non-prescription drugs only under special permissions. If that is the case, all awareness campaigns can have your company branding, but cannot have the product branding. It cannot have a drug mentioned or dosage mentioned. No, because it's up for the public at large. Unless you have specific permissions for non-prescription drugs to be displayed on a banner. That's a different thing. But those permissions have to be very, very specific.
There are certain rules that govern pharma, some that govern the doctor, and some that talk about the relationship, like UCPMP. Can a pharma company have a liability because of a doctor's non-compliance during any marketing campaign?
The simple answer would be no, provided the doctor is doing in his completely individual capacity and individual discretion. But
Right.
at any point of time, if it is shown that the pharma company knew about it, had given sort of an implied consent to it. So we say knowledge and consent or permission. Those are the three words that would generally legally be used. So did you know about it? Did you know about it and keep quiet about it, which means implied consent? Or did you actually actively give consent? So if either of the three is proven, then there is liability. Else there isn't. So it is important, that even the medical practitioners you are dealing with, at some point of time, you need to make them aware that this is something that you cannot do. And if you do, we are not liable. So that sort of a disclaimer has to go out somewhere. So that is, we have this lovely word in law, due diligence. So all this comes under due diligence.
Understood.
Have you been duly diligent?
Understood. Clearly pharma digital advertising is governed by a number of regulations, including UCPMP, which at surface seems to be voluntary, but does have a mandatory impact if you are part of any of these associations. And Section 3 within that, defines a lot of the information that you need to provide, or you need to put up the necessary framework to provide when you're doing digital advertising. And not only these acts which are specific to healthcare, but also there are other acts with wider mandates, such as the IT Act and the Indian Penal IPC Act, which all of which have implications for anything which is being done. The second thing is that digital advertising needs to operate differently from the traditionally used print material, because it is there for a limited duration. The ability to provide supporting data has to be handled in a different manner, and also because sometimes we don't know who's the person who's the medical professional who's looking at it. So that's something that has to be really taken care of. Also, that in putting anything together, it makes a lot of sense for the companies to essentially think about keeping their compliance related paperwork in place beforehand, and then to make sure that the necessary claims as well as the necessary opportunity to access data is provided prominently in any of the products which is advertised. And also very importantly, that anything to do with Ayush requires prior approval to have been taken for digital advertising as well, so that the products can be, so that the necessary activity can be undertaken. Otherwise, it is actually prohibited from doing so.